Now let's move on to more stories. Nigeria's National Security Advisor, Nuhu Ribadu, has held talks in Abuja with a visiting United States congressional delegation. He wrote on his X handle on Sunday that the group was in the country on a fact-finding mission following earlier discussions in Washington on shared security priorities. The delegation included U.S. Representatives Mario Diaz-Balart, Norma Torres, Scott Franklin, Juan Siscomani and Riley M. Moore. The U.S. ambassador to Nigeria, Richard Mills, also attended. A presence, Ribadu said, reflects the importance between countries attached to the engagement. According to the NSA, discussions centered on counter-terrorism cooperation, regional stability, and strengthening the Nigeria-U.S. strategic security partnership. He added that he is optimistic the engagement would help deepen trust and collaboration and shared commitment to peace and security. Also, a high-level delegation from the United States on Saturday held separate meetings with Benue State Governor Reverend Father Hyacinth Alia and key religious and traditional leaders in Makurdi. The delegation, which included members of the U.S. Congress, the U.S. Assistant Secretary of State, and the U.S. Ambassador to Nigeria, first visited the government house where they met with the governor. They later proceeded to the Bishop's House in Makurdi for a closed-door session with the bishops of the Catholic Diocese of Makurdi and the Catholic Diocese of Katsina alongside the Tortiv, His Royal Majesty James Ayatse. Although the visiting officials did not address journalists after the meetings, Governor Alia, in his statement on his verified Facebook page, confirmed that discussions focused on the security and humanitarian challenges affecting Benue State and the wider North Central region. Well, moving on to other stories, we have this from John Vance Group, who hosted industry leaders and government officials in Akure to celebrate a year of strong growth. Group Executive Director Tarun Chawla highlighted the company's expanded global footprint and thanked the Ondo State government and financial partners for their support. Governor Lucky Orimiso Ayedatiwa commended John Vance as a model homegrown enterprise, noting its 10 factories, 1,500 employees, and thousands of benefiting farmers. He reaffirmed the state's commitment to policies that attract investment. The event celebrated the John Vance workforce and the company's rising community impact. With 9 subsidiaries across 3 continents and major facilities in Akure, Ileoluji, Idore, and Owo, John Vance remains focused on scaling capacity and strengthening Nigeria's global competitiveness.
Profound delight and a deep sense of purpose that I join you this evening to celebrate what I call vision, enterprise, innovation, and the remarkable story of prosperity being written here in Ondo State. And I was asking Mr. John Alamu, I say he has over 3,000 plus staff. So I wonder why you still refer Ondo State as civil servant state. That narrative has changed. We are now an industrialized state. I remember when we commissioned the first factory, I think in Akure, some years back. And from what we are seeing tonight, especially from the documentary, I cannot but say, wow, well done. Let me reaffirm our commitment to sustaining this momentum. I'd like to congratulate the John Vance Group for yet another year of remarkable achievements and for continuing to be a shining advertisement of Ondo State, the Ondo State industrial renaissance. Together, we can deepen the work already begun, build industries that outlive us, shape a future where opportunities are abound and growth is inclusive.
So let's make sure that we make the best out of the opportunity given to all of us. Together, we will innovate. Together, we have a long way to go. Together, we can do a lot of things, but if we remain in discipline, I think we have a lot to achieve. It is just getting started.
All right, okay, congratulations to John Vent's group. And Rufai, Dr. Abati, this morning, of course, the focus is on Benin Republic with the coup that's happened, adding to the litany or trend of coups, not just in the West African region, but in some parts of Africa as well. But also, very importantly, the NSA receiving a delegation from the United States on a fact-finding mission to Nigeria. We've been talking about this issue since that infamous post by President Donald Trump and the threat of coming with guns are blazing to Nigeria if things are not fixed. Your take on these stories?
Okay, real quickly. I totally condemn every coup. And kudos to the Nigerian forces that went out there to quell the coup. It's not today that Nigeria has been protecting the democracy of West Africa and Africa in general. And kudos to our soldiers. But the bone of contention that Dr. Abati picked out is, did they do it legally? Because there's a proviso in Section 5 of the Constitution that talked about the president notifying the Senate. Was the Senate notified? And that's why people are now drawing comparisons with the case of Niger. Because in the case of Niger, we all saw the leak that happened, that Nigeria was already preparing a strike, and then the matter came to the Senate, and the Senate advised against it. But what we saw here is that all of a sudden President Tinubu, after the fact, just announced that Nigerian troops had been there, and they had quelled the coup and uprising, which we support. But the way it was done. So the question is, will President Tinubu now come back to tell the Senate? Because there's also a proviso when you read through Section 5 of the Constitution that talked about that, okay, that the president can do it, and I'm sure that's where the government will hide under. That the president can do it if it's a limited operation, if it impinges on national security. I don't think they'll be able to prove that, but maybe they will prove that, oh, because it's so close to home, it impinges on national security. And in the next 7 days, maybe now they will now formally make an appeal to the Senate. But the most important question is, and a lot of people are asking this, why did it go through the Senate for the case of Niger? Is it because of cultural ties? Why is that the Senate questioned the case of Niger? Because prior to even the strikes in Niger, there were cases of protests in the north. So we should also look at that. But let's go back to it. In as much as I condemn coup, is Talon a saint? No. And you see, the reason for the coups in these African countries and why an average watcher of television today might support those coups, despite the fact that I condemn the idea, and why I condemn the idea of a coup is that once you start, you don't know where to stop. Yeah. Everybody that has force now can take power. Even Yahoo boys and criminals can take power. But the question is, are the African leaders not even behaving like Yahoo boys in the first place? Look at Talon. It was just on Saturday. Talon passed, and the National Assembly was probably Robertson, passed a law to extend the presidential term to 7 years. Anyway, Talon will not be a beneficiary. But the most important part we should look at about that law is the 25-30-man Senate seat that pretty much second guesses what the lower house does. There are indications that Talon might want to put himself there to be able to check this his anointed candidate minister. And Talon had been very high-handed, like Ouattara. You see, when I even look at the hypocrisy of ECOWAS and they say the volunteer force, and I'm seeing Côte d'Ivoire in there. Côte d'Ivoire, with Alassane Ouattara, that has violated democratic tenets, that has committed this act of statitism in power, that because most of his preferred successors died, like Hamid Bakayoko and the likes, he decided to stay on the power. He stayed there for like 16 years. Is it countries like Togo? Togo did the same with the constitution. They've made the role of the president ceremonial. They have a council of ministers that the president leads that has the real power. So all of the African leaders have made it very easy for the coups to happen. So in as much as we are saying we condemn coups, we should also check these Yahoo boys we call leaders. Because across the African continent, there are a bunch of Yahoo boys that always think of themselves and not the interest of the people. Secondly, as regards the, what's it called? NSA.
Fact-finding mission.
That's very good. But Americans already know the facts of what's happening. There's been mass killings. I'm happy that Americans are on ground. We knew there was a fact-finding mission that was supported by someone that's been nominated as ambassador today. We know how that ended. But the truth has to be said. Where is the government going to show us those that are complicit in all of this. If the government cannot show us, then there's a level of complicity going on. Yesterday, they released 100 people. You release people from Niger. There are no killing of bandits. There are no bringing the bandits to book. The playbook is way too obvious now. That's why some people are saying, isn't it looking like collabo? They kidnap people. Till today, the government has not been able to tell us. Those that ordered the troops to leave the secondary school in Kebbi.
They said that an investigation.
Investigation my foot. Why investigation done? Investigation my foot. So they don't know who gave an order that troops should leave. And some minutes after, people came in there and picked up our girls. Now, about 100 of them came back. The NSA was even giving us updates that they are in good condition and everything. So why can't the NSA root out those criminal elements that took away the 100 people they've not released now? This thing is looking like collabo. And except we have that level of sincerity. So we are having all of this, and because the government is not standing tall.
All right.
I thought I had the producer saying I have 5 minutes. But I will try to, in cases, you know.
Is it trying to increase it?
Yeah, I may increase it. But it's as follows. Now, chapter 8 of the UN Charter, talks about preventing, forceful removal of legitimate governments, democratic governments, and regional groups coming together. Article 21 of the ECOWAS protocol retains that principle. Article 25 of the ECOWAS protocol further explains that. So if you look at it, on the surface of it, my gut feeling as an ordinary man would be to say, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has acted reasonably. He has tried to respond very quickly. It was an emergency that was happening by the border, next door to Nigeria. Yeah. President Yayi Boni, who was the predecessor of Patrice Talon, used to refer to Republic of Benin as the 37th state of Nigeria. So, the president could say, Sunday morning, this has happened. Maybe there is some collateral damage that Nigeria may suffer. Let's quickly move in. But it was not just about impulsive reaction. We were told that the Republic of Benin made 2 requests. 1, that Nigeria should help secure the airspace. 2, that Nigeria should even send in ground troops to secure constitutional institutions in the Republic of Benin. So President Tinubu may have acted along this regard. Now ECOWAS says, we have deployed a standby force. That standby force, does this exist in reality? That standby force is not something you can call up in an emergency. Because to the best of my knowledge, I may be wrong, it's only Nigeria that went in there. And Nigeria is acting on the basis of the brotherly request by the Republic of Benin, which is just next door. While, as an ordinary man, I think that that's nice for Nigeria to show that, we're the biggest country in West Africa. Yeah. We will not allow any nonsense. There is the legal aspect of it. Now, some people may say it's political, it's about survival, it's not legalese. But the Constitution of Nigeria is the basic law in Section 5. The president of Nigeria, if he sees that Nigeria is facing imminent attack, is given powers to deploy troops. But subsections 4 and subsection 5 of that section 5 says he shall get the approval, the ratification of the National Assembly. Did the president seek the approval of the National Assembly, even if it was a weekend, Sunday morning emergency? Now, if you go to section 305 of the same constitution, under which the president of Nigeria as commander-in-chief can declare a state of emergency, sub 2, sub 3 will seem to explain that, look, the president also needs the concurrence of the National Defense Council and then that of the National Assembly. However, if he does not, if he acts without getting the approval of the National Assembly, the Constitution of Nigeria says within 14 days limit, he has to get the concurrence of the National Assembly, who will ratify that action. Now, a community reading of Section 5 and Section 305, sub 2(3), will seem to tell us that the Constitution of Nigeria does not allow a situation where the President of Nigeria, even as Commander-in-Chief, can act unilaterally. And the whole idea is to prevent a dictatorship. Our Constitution is modeled after, American democracy Constitution. Yeah. So President Tinubu having done this, they may say, well, he consulted with the leadership of the National Assembly, he called people, he didn't act unilaterally, he needed to protect Nigeria and all of that, or respond to a brotherly request. He will have to, before 12 noon today, transmit a letter to the National Assembly to say that this is the action I have taken. I need the ratification of the National Assembly. That's what our law says. But you may say this is not legalistic and all that, but we have to respect our Constitution. And then the National Assembly can be persuaded to say, well, okay, Nigerian troops are in Republic of Benin for this reason, for that reason, and it was an emergency. The president needed to act to prevent collateral damage. But I salute the Nigerian soldiers, the Air Force, the ground troops who went in there, clearly for one reason. It was a demonstration effect to send a signal to anybody, any ambitious person in Nigeria who may want to imitate what is happening, what has happened in Mali, Madagascar, Burkina Faso, Guinea-Bissau, Niger, Chad, that the Nigerian military has the capacity to quell any kind of violation of the constitutional order. However, President Patrice Talon has spoken, but President Patrice Talon, I didn't hear him paying special attention to Nigeria. I thought if we deployed our troops, we incurred cost. Patrice Talon should, at least as a brother, say, Nigeria helped, or ECOWAS helped. But he said loyal forces. Who are those loyal forces? We are a sovereign country, and President Tinubu may have shown brotherhood and solidarity. We deserve to be commended for that. Finally, the situation in Ondo State. We just had the Imo Economic Summit. Yeah. And one of the things we said is that these states have to provide an enabling environment for businesses to thrive, for entrepreneurs to thrive. And we have seen in the example of John Vance, right, and Ondo State, that the state government is committed to promoting entrepreneurship and supporting entrepreneurship. That is a lesson, an example that other states can learn from. Now, congressmen from the US, they are in Nigeria. They were in Benue, they were in the NSA's meeting and all of that. They say they are fact-finding. Shouldn't they have tried to find facts before now, before jumping to the conclusion and the emotional representations of those who are alleging religious persecution? Balat, one of the persons there, is the deputy chair of the Appropriations Committee of the House of Reps. Rep Molly, Congressman Molly, Riley Molly or whatever, Riley Moore, was one of the persons, told by President Trump to investigate. After holding meetings in the US, after condemning Nigeria, after saying Nigeria is having Christian genocide, they are coming after the fact to come and do investigation. Okay, has any one of them been kidnapped? Nobody has kidnapped them. Richard Mills, the US ambassador in Nigeria, accompanied them. He's on the ground. So they've come here to see things for themselves. Before now, former UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson was here. He said he feels very safe in Nigeria. I'm sure he enjoyed the pepper soup and maybe pounded yam before leaving Nigeria. So this is a very complex subject, very complex. And I hope that will be the message that Balat and Congressman Moore and other members of the team will take away from their meetings with NSA Ribadu and also their meetings in Benue State with Christian leaders.
Truly, it's a complex issue, and I'm glad that there's a fact-finding mission from the United States to Nigeria. I believe that this is also an outcome of Nigeria's own delegation to the United States led by the NSA, following which a strategic partnership committee was set up by the president led by the NSA. However, talking about them feeling safe themselves, Dr. Bati, I wish we had the kind of protection and security that these individuals had access to make them feel safe in Nigeria. A lot of Nigerians would want to have that level of security, but sadly, that's not the case for many Nigerians. A lot of Nigerians do not have the money or capacity to be able to afford the kind of security that these people have, hence why they can feel very safe. It would be terrible if anything happened to them on Nigerian soil. So the Nigerian government would make every effort and dispatch every resource to ensure that they're able to keep them safe and secure. Sadly, that's not the reality for a number of Nigerians in many cases. We wish this were so, and based on the recent move by the president, he has demonstrated a seriousness to tackling that, whereby Nigerians can go to bed with their two eyes closed. As it stands at the moment, that is not the case. However, with regards to this fact-finding mission and following the president's directive, this is where we talked about at the very early stages the importance of dialogue. This is what happens when nations, government to government, meet and are able to then have conversations. I don't think that President Trump made that statement without an awareness or understanding of what was already happening in Nigeria, because, as we say, these people have access to the internet, they have access to social media. Some of these people have investments, including their churches, mission fields here in Nigeria. So they hear directly from the horse's mouth. So they understand they have a grasp of what is happening. Yes, Nigeria wants to put its best foot forward, but I hope, like I'd said, and I continue to maintain, that this would give us an opportunity to finally right the wrong that a number of people in the Middle Belt, when I say Middle Belt, I mean in the Benue region, in Jos Plateau, have been complaining about, especially with regards to their rights to religious freedom. Americans can come. We don't want boots on the ground. We don't want economic sanctions. We want to be taken off a country of particular concern. But I also think that even higher than that, a motivation for taking action in these areas should be the welfare of the people and to end the killings, full stop. That's what Nigerians want. We don't want to wait for Americans to come here and tell us what is already glaring. We want to do right by the people of Nigeria. And that's why I hope that this will serve as a wake-up call to the government to ensure that Christians and Muslims across the country are able to express religious freedom at different levels of their faith, and also in particular to ensure that security is a mainstay for every single Nigeria, irrespective of ethnicity, religion, creed, anything. Just make sure that Nigerians are safe. Now, moving on to Benin Republic, just a few things, and I just want to reiterate what I said earlier, and it continuous calls that the reason why it looks attractive for some civilians is, by coups, is that the government themselves or the leaders themselves have abused democracy. They have weakened institutions, thereby the coup plotters taking advantage of the discontent of the people to take power by any means possible. We do not in any way support a coup, because coups or a military administration, Nigeria itself has faced military rule, and we understand. Let's not forget the days of military rule. Let us not forget the days whereby we could not come out and speak as freely as we do, at least to a large extent today. Let us not forget the havoc of the military rule, so that we do not begin to say, oh, it looks attractive. But I want to ask and make a call for the leaders themselves to do right by the people and let the people enjoy the dividends of democracy. Look at Burkina Faso, Mali, we look at Niger, we look at Guinea-Bissau. A lot of times it is the discontent of the people, sit-tight leaders, abuse of the constitution, as was done in recently in Benin Republic, where they extended the tenure of the presidency by 5 to 7 years, by 2 years, 5 to 7 years, in order to make a way for the anointed candidate of the sitting president alone. Even though he's been credited with good economic reforms, they have been plagued continuously with insecurity and also an abuse of constitutional powers. And so these are some of the issues that if the West African region is serious about, let ECOWAS speak against undemocratic institutions in different countries, in addition to putting their boots on ground. And so these are some of the issues to talk about. I'm sure that we'll take this further. I believe that Femi Akinsoya will be here with World Week very shortly, and we'll be discussing this and taking this further.